Today's teardown is on an engine I did not think I'd get the chance to buy again, but thanks to one viewer, I now have another Dodge Viper V10 to take apart. And I did one of these teardowns, I don't know, 7 or 8 months ago. That was like another lifetime ago. But that engine was a lot more bare than this engine. This one has an intake manifold, throttle body, exhaust manifold, and some brackets that the other engine did not. However, this engine was a lot more expensive than the last one. A lot. But I did also get the Tremec T56 with this in unknown condition. I don't know if I'll ever do anything with that besides sell it as is. But we are going to take this thing completely down and find out what's wrong with it. Now, according to the seller, this has a bad cylinder. And that's a pretty generic term, I'm not going to lie. It could mean it has no compression in one cylinder. It could have low compression. It could have rod knock in one cylinder. It could push coolant out of that cylinder. Or it could be something entirely different. I have no idea. These are always a question mark. So hopefully it's not like a bomb went off on the inside. Fingers crossed. It's got a lot of money wrapped up in this, but I think I'll do okay. This engine has some appearance of being weathered. It might have sat outside. You can tell by the finish on the valve covers, and yes, I know that these valve covers are notorious for that, but this one's extra like that. A lot more so than I'm used to seeing. Something that one of my guys noticed when it came in that I'm also not that happy about. It appears that there is no head gasket on the passenger side. I don't like that. Don't like that one bit. Nope. Okay, let's get the plugs out and see what the plugs look like. Well, that one's broke. And that one's also broke. Oh, the stories plugs will tell. So there are 9 Champion plugs which are supposed to be in this engine, and there is 1 Bosch Platinum plug which somebody probably found on a street corner because, well, that's where they go. They all look to be about the same condition except for one, and now all these plugs look pretty bad, but there's one that appears to be gapped extra large, and I'm going to guess that's something in the cylinder head or maybe the piston, or maybe they work together to re-gap this plug. But that one is not like the others. Now that the plugs are out, we're going to see if this thing turns over. Not a lot of faith in it at this point, but you never know. We might get lucky. That wasn't a good sound. Oh. Sounds like there's a rendition of Stomp going on inside this engine. Ooh, a double. Oh, we're getting somewhere. Ooh, I hear crunchy stuff. Let's keep going. All right, now we're just turning the bolt. I'm going to stop before that breaks because that is not a very significant bolt. We'll deal with that later. Let's get this thing apart. We're going to start by taking this intake manifold off. There's only a few bolts that hold this thing on. There we go. Unfortunately, this looks ugly. There's some mystery fluid or juice, fluid juice, sitting on top of this valve. And there's just a whole bunch of debris. This engine clearly sat outside. I think there's a leaf in one of these. It's just not good. That one's got some cobwebs in it. This is the cylinder with the messed up plug, and it has a bunch of debris in there. It does not look good. We'll see. We might get lucky. Time to go to 1927 and use a 1/2 inch impact grade 1/2 inch drive. That's right, an SAE socket on this 1927 Dodge Viper engine. Get the exhaust manifold off. We're going to peel off the driver's side valve cover and see what lies beneath. Okay. Well, I wish I could say I like the consistency of the oil. Lubricant. There we go. I don't think that's oil. I think it's a mixture of water, coolant, oil, and a tinge of metal. Just a tinge. Either way, this thing looks to have sat for a very, very long time, and it could have been exposed to the elements. It's hard to say. But I don't see anything completely out of the normal here. On to the other side. Well, that's really dirty. Well, this is pretty dirty in a different way. It's got like flakes of I don't know what. Unknown material. But there's also a few missing head bolts. At least they're not like broken off or anything. But I kind of guessed that this head had been off because, well, someone had to get the head gasket out of there somehow. So we don't need those. There's already got one on the other side. What do you need two for? Going to take a moment and pull the coils and plug wires out of the way and kind of clean some of this up. Going to start getting this cylinder head off. We're going to pull all the 11 7/16 bolts from 1927 out, and then we'll get the larger head bolts out and pull this head off. Now this head design does not require me to pull the rockers off like an LS where I have to have access to get the stand out of the way. I can pull the head with the valve train in it, so that's what I'm going to do. I'd like to keep them complete. Now all that's left are the head bolts, the large ones, and we'll get this head off. Those are the push rods pushing that head up. Okay. Oh boy. Oh boy. That is not what I want to see. Well, these push rods are all somewhat okay. That sucks. This push rod, a little curvature to the left. That's what she said. Huh. Well, one bad cylinder, ladies and gentlemen. One bad cylinder. Actually, I just need to put this back together, and then everything will be fine. See, I think that goes on that side. I just got to find the rest of it, and we're good. But why did it do that? And the block is junk, so that's cool. This is a fancy-looking boat anchor, but it'll probably make a good coffee table. At least there's that. You know, I know Chrysler wasn't too big on the cylinder deactivation. They did put it in some of the Hemi vehicles. I don't think they put it on the Viper engines. But this cylinder has been deactivated. Unfortunately. That's all damage from that wrist pin. Man, wrist pins are like the strongest part of an engine. I'm convinced. The cylinder head has excessive damage as well, unfortunately. But we kind of figured that after looking at where the piston was supposed to go. The intake seat is gone on this cylinder. It's a seat delete. I don't know why you'd get rid of a seat. It probably ran hot and dropped a seat. That's what Chryslers do. It's what a lot of engines do. I'm not trying to make fun of just Chrysler here. Or maybe the piston came apart and broke the seat and the seat fell out. I don't think that happened. I think it got hot and dropped the seat, judging by the way this engine smells. But either way, this head still may be a viable core for someone to do a lot of work to. I'm not going to scrap it. It's not like an LS head where I have stacks of them. It's a Viper head, so there might be some value here. All right, same deal as the last side. We're going to get all the 7/16 out. Man, this thing likes to shoot the head bolts out of it. All right. So the good news is I don't see any signs of chaos in any of these cylinders, just water. There's just some rust in this cylinder, and at this point the block is scrap. Okay, you might be able to go crazy and fix the block. I don't think it's worth it. I mean, it's through the bore and the sleeve. As far as I'm concerned, the block is a coffee table. It still has value there. But more damage on this side would mean possibly the head is damaged on this side. It would also mean that I'd have less rods and pistons to sell, which I can't really count on those yet either because I haven't seen inside the crankcase. But let's go take a look at that cylinder head. This head actually looks pretty good. I don't see any valve damage. I don't see any surface damage or combustion chamber damage. And I kind of expected some because of the amount of carnage in that one cylinder. I expected some of the debris from that piston to end up in a different cylinder. But I don't see it. It's all on the other side of the engine. So this head looks okay. And I think what happened is what likely happened is that someone diagnosed this as completely destroyed. And they said, hey, we need to put the plugs back in it and sell it to that guy on the YouTube and see if he'll take it apart. And we'll put the plugs in the wrong spot, and then I'll kind of throw them for a loop, and it'll be funny in the video. That may not be what really happened, but they threw plugs in any order, and I don't think it came from that cylinder. I don't think that the plug that was destroyed came from that cylinder. I think it came from the cylinder with the piston delete. We're going to go ahead and get this bracket out of the way and start cleaning this engine up. There's another bolt in it. Turns out that you got to pull all the bolts out if you want to take something off. Oh, look how easy that was. Next, we'll get the crank pulley off and then start peeling this timing cover off. Well, this was the crank bolt that came out of that, and I just don't think that looks right. That isn't right. And unfortunately, it looks like the rest of the actual bolt is still in the crank. And that bolt was drilled off center and kind of threaded. Boy, this is a hack job. I mean, I'm impressed that it worked, but did it work? It seems like a lot of work to go through to fix things the wrong way. Well, I should have known better because the metric socket just fit too good on that. So I'm going to use my puller here and hope for the best. This could get pretty ugly. I'm not going to lie. I'm not really looking forward to it. I don't know if I should leave that wrong bolt in there. Maybe I'll take that out. There's the worst part about working on something is when someone else has. Please work. Pretty please. Well, I can hear bad things happening and feel it. We are not off to a good start here. All right, let's try getting this on there a little bit better. Well, I guess I'm going to get the... Let's try... See if we can level this out. That doesn't do much. Boy, we are in a predicament. How are we going to get out of this? We are going to... We're going to use just a bunch of force. Ooh, bad things are happening. I don't like this. Nope. I don't like this one bit. Wait, I think we're moving. Well, folks, that crank is pretty rough, and I probably did some more damage to it. However, it surely wasn't great before. It looks like, I mean, there's signs of someone grinding on it. The snout has some deep grooves and rust in it. And they basically broke the crank bolt off and drilled, tapped, and threaded this bolt in, which this bolt is nowhere near good enough to turn a crank over. I mean, that's why I felt like it was going to break. I knew something was off because I remember the last Chrysler teardown, it was at least a 21 or a 24 millimeter. I can't remember what these used. But still, like, this is the solution. And I mean, I could understand it on a cheaper car for sure, but on one of these, like, why? And the astounding part is this isn't why this is a core. This is a core because it deleted one of the pistons. Some people should not work on cars. I don't know how you break a crank bolt, but they clearly did. Now it is time to peel the front timing cover off. Let's get the water pump out. Maybe there's a bolt hiding behind it. Probably got to get the pan off to do this. I bet you that's it. Well, in order to get the front timing cover off, it looks like I need to pull the pan. I think this area has the oil pickup in it, and I'm never going to get the timing cover off with that still attached. At least I realize that now. Anyway, we're going to get all this stuff cleaned up and get the block sitting on its tail on this table so that we can pull the pan. One thing I haven't done yet is check to see if this is drained. So before I make a gigantic mess in my shop, we're going to try to drain this thing. Oh, that's oil. That's really oil. Yeah, that's oil. That's that 0W0 stuff. Neat. So this is why you don't store things outside, for starters. Oh, we've got some chocolate milk. Was that burned coffee? I don't know. I don't drink coffee. I don't know what it's supposed to look like. It surely doesn't smell like coffee. It sounds rather disturbing as well. Yeah, there's still some oil in there. Yeah, we're going to be here a minute. While we're waiting, I'm going to pull this rear main seal plate off. Oh, that one's gone forever. Alright, I've got this engine sitting on its tail so we can pull the pan off. I have no idea what else I'm going to find at this rate. Everything's off the table. Boy. Well, that is not nuggets. This is like mud nuggets. But this kind of fished some of this out of here. This just actually... There we go. Come on, get out of there. This is kind of hard to do with one hand. That should be the most of it. I don't even know what that stuff is. Clearly had water sitting in it for quite some time. Let's see if we can identify some of this stuff. Oh, it turns out it's metal. Who knew? Well, I found what I thought I'd find. Feel like that cylinder head, Chris Hansen, that piston, told it to take a seat. There's parts of a seat right there. The rest of this looks like piston debris. I know. Wow. It's pretty bad. I don't think that one's going back together. Next, let's get this pickup off. Well, that was dumb. Slimy. Yeah, now I think I can get this timing cover off. I think. I literally don't see any more bolts. I've looked this over like 500 times. Missed one the first time. Now what? It's moving. I don't know why it's not coming off. It certainly moves. It seems like this is the area where it's stuck. Thermostat housing is off. No difference. Sad thing is, this is kind of an expensive piece, so I don't really want to go doing too much damage to it. The block at this point I don't really care about. Oh, it's coming now. Wow. I would like to know what they used to put this on, because they did not want this to come off. Oh, we are making some progress, yes. I'll leave that in there so you don't go back down. That out. Don't mind that. It was just glued on. Not even glued. Could have been stuck on the oil pump gear here. It's really hard to say what was keeping that on. But the important thing is I didn't break it, because I need every piece I can get at this point. Here's a better look at the hackery that is the end of the crank. I'm not quite sure how you break a crank bolt in this, unless you cross thread it or over torque it. That's got to be the only way you do that. But I'm impressed that they were able to do what they've done to get that crank pulley to stay on. However, that really hurts the value of the crank. I mean, I'm sure a machine shop can straighten this out, but I'm not sure whether it's worth it or not. All right, let's get ready to pull these rods and pistons out. Pull this out of the way first. All right, we're going to start pulling the rods and pistons out. These take a 12.3/8 socket. Because of the rust in these boards, it's going to be a little work to get the rod and piston out. So I'm going to kind of spray some stuff I got laying around the shop in there so I can have my best shot at getting these out unscathed. Well, there's one. There it is. The bearings don't look so great either. Some of them are chunking pretty good. Starting to delaminate. They're grooved. There's the cylinder that let go. It's pretty rough. It's hard to tell whether that happened from this catastrophic event or whether this was because it mixed coolant with oil because it ran hot. It's hard to say what the first failure mode of this engine were, although there were many. That is a fact. Here are the rods and pistons out of this engine, at least, well, 9 1/3 or so of them. And I have to say, to do that much damage to the piston and the cylinder head, and the rod is like nothing happened. It didn't even know. There's some pretty beefy rods in this engine. Now it's time to pull the cam gear so we can get the timing chain off. I really like this super simple design. There's like nothing that can go wrong here. There's no tensioner. It's a dual row chain. There we go. Now it's time to pull the mains. Oh, gotta pull the motor mount brackets off first. That's a pretty good sized crank right there. The main bearings have some light grooving, but really not bad. Not terrible at all. Next, we're going to pull the lifters out so that we can get the cam out. All of the lifters look pretty good. I don't see any major scoring on any of them. This one's got a little wear here, so I'm hoping that the camshaft's okay. All right, last step is to get this cam out. Not so lucky today, folks. A couple lobes torn up pretty good. I've heard people say that these cams are pretty soft. This is not the cylinder that let go, so this is an entirely different issue. The crank journals have some wear as well, but nothing terrible, but that's the least of my concern. That nose of the crank is definitely much worse than any of the other work that would be needed. Well, I don't always win, and that is okay. As long as I win more often than I lose, I feel like I'm doing something right. I think this engine was severely overheated. It likely dropped the valve seat, and, well, valve seats cannot pass through cylinder heads that easily, and the piston was pulverized. I'm actually surprised there wasn't more damage in that engine. And it may seem like a total loss for most of you. However, I still have a lot of good parts to sell. I have an oil pan, a timing cover, one good cylinder head, intake manifold, valve covers, exhaust manifold, and some miscellaneous parts. I'm going to do just fine. I just won't meet my normal margins. I'm not going to take a loss at it by any stretch. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you'd like to buy parts from this engine or any of the other engines I've torn down, I'm going to leave my email in the video description. And as always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.